If Kellyanne Conway wanted, she could be on TV 24 hours a day. She is by far the president's most visible, most aggressive, and perhaps effective spokeswoman. And so she does a lot of shows. I've interviewed her. I've seen all the anchors interview her. She very forcefully presses the president's agenda, and it is very hard to knock her off her game. So what happened? About a week went by where she wasn't on TV. Can you imagine that? A woman who is the counselor to the president, who's in all kinds of meetings, has a lot of other stuff to do, actually wasn't on TV for 5, 6, 7 days. So this led to speculation here inside the Beltway and a CNN story that turned out to be totally wrong, that she had been sidelined, that she had been yanked from TV. Now, Kellyanne did make a couple of mistakes when she talked about a non-existent massacre, but she had just kind of mixed up the facts there, and she got a lot of negative publicity when she did that little plug for Ivanka Trump's clothing line. But basically, President Trump counts on her more than any other member of his team to press the agenda on television. In fact, after that sort of messy period when Michael Flynn was forced out, was fired as National Security Advisor, the next morning, it was Kellyanne Conway on 3 different morning shows at the president's request, explaining, defending, and helping people to understand the situation. So, you have anonymous sources say, oh, she's become a liability, they've taken her off TV. So in the last day, what has she done? She did an interview with Hannity. She did an interview with Fox and Friends. She went and gave the kickoff speech at the CPAC Conservative Conference, and then she did a whole bunch more interviews at CPAC with various journalists. So, part of the reason that maybe she wasn't on TV quite as much, because, people out there forget these public figures who attract so much flack and everybody likes to fire at them because that's a kind of a blood sport in Washington. They have actual lives. And Kellyanne is a mom. She's got 4 children. They are still in New York. She's in the process of moving the family to Washington. They've been out looking at schools and houses. Is that a crime? She has a life. She's trying to balance work and family. And I think she'd like to be on TV a little less because she is such a ubiquitous spokeswoman for the administration. So it just seems to me that one of the reasons that she takes so much flack, and you can agree or disagree with how she handles herself on television, that's fair game, is that she works for a president who has accused major news organizations of being the enemy of the American people. She also works with senior strategist Steve Bannon, who just yesterday at CPAC talked about the media again as the opposition party. He said a bunch of globalists and corporatists, I'm not sure all of us are quite that smart to fully understand the nuances of those terms, that are trying to stop the Trump agenda. Now, Kellyanne Conway, who's had great working relationships for years with reporters, doesn't use that kind of harsh language. She certainly does call out what she sees as biased or unfair or inaccurate reporting when that is at issue. But she takes a lot of flack because she's on the front lines, and she is the one putting herself out there with anchors who then are trying to hold her accountable for everything the president says or does. That's fine. That's her job. She's not complaining about it. But this notion that she was somehow, it's only in Washington would you, spend a few days trying to do your job and maybe spend a few hours trying to help your family, and suddenly it's like, oh, wow, she's in the doghouse. Well, it's completely and totally ridiculous. White House aides have told me this is completely and totally ridiculous. I've discussed it with Kellyanne Conway herself. Have at her on the substance, but the notion that if you're not on TV every day, you don't exist, your stock has dropped, is just such a typical BS Beltway game.